guys, what's up? Welcome to the Aimbot glitch. Now if you want to learn this, watch the entire video. I'll do it at the end. See you in the end of the video. Now some of my friends want to learn this, like I didn't like them. So let's invite some of my online friends right now. There's only 5 friends and only 3 of them are on. Yesterday only 4 of them were on. Let's learn that leaky to do this. Gotta do the little spitty. Holy shit. Yeah. Okay, I didn't have gun.
Come here, mate.
My nightmares have nightmares. Now Fortnite has night too though. How about I just play some night Fortnite creepypasta on the phone for you? Eh? Let's find some Fortnite creeps. Let's find some stuff to creep y'all out.
Terrifying legends or images that have circulated their way around the internet. They're the modern-day scary campfire stories told on a much larger, more accessible platform, which makes them pretty creepy. Whether or not they're rooted in entirely up to you. These days, it seems like any big part of pop culture has their own set of creepypastas, including video game sensations the likes of Fortnite. So today, we are taking a look at the top 10 creepypastas that have popped up concerning the game, with our list of the top 10 scary Fortnite creepypastas. And warning, some of these are just flat out what do you expect with creepypastas. Number 10, Followed. From YouTube channel Script, Followed is a story about a gamer who used Fortnite to help with his mental health. He got into an accident and almost died. He keeps seeing a rabbit with a ski mask who keeps paying him a visit whenever he plays the game. The rabbit talks to him and tells him that he will never cheat death again. He thinks that his mother keeps letting the funny man in, but she tells him that he's just seeing things. So one Friday night he plays a solo match and notices that everyone in the pregame lobby has the same default blonde guy skin. He ignores it, thinking he's in a server with a bunch of noobs. The match begins, he lands at Tilted Towers, and apparently so does everybody else on the server. Also weird, he grabs a loot chest and scores a scar, and then starts taking out foes. He begins to suspect that they're all bots. Their names are default Fortnite player with a number. Every time he gets a kill, another player named Frank also gets a kill, the only one without the default name. Finally, it gets down to just him and Frank, and that's when the player realizes who Frank is. It's the Bunny Man, but in the game. He tries to take Frank out, and that's when he hears the demonic voice say, "I dare you to kill me." He keeps missing Frank and is soon out of ammo. Before he can switch weapons, though, Frank appears in person and says out loud, "I dare you to kill me." The player then dies of a heart attack. And at number 9, the bus driver. Another creepypasta from the script, this one is called The Bus Driver, and is about a scary Easter egg. The story is a rumor on Reddit about the battle bus, an Easter egg that you can only see on Friday the 13th. In order to see it at the start of the match, on that date, don't get out of the battle bus. Stay until you're about to get kicked off, then unplug your router. Plug it back in, and do not find a new game to join, and you'll be still on the bus. So the player's like, yeah, I'm gonna give it a go. And it works. Except it's not what they expected. The bus doesn't go over the map, but rather, it goes through a passage of time. Events throughout history play on the screen in front of him. Then he sees the future. He sees World War III break out, there's a nuclear fallout, and he sees his family members die. Time flashes forward again, and he sees himself trying to survive with other war survivors. A missile drops down from the sky and kills him. He's then kicked off the bus, and is pretty traumatized. And at number 8, Disappearing Teddy. The disappearing teddies are nothing new in Fortnite. They've freaked out a lot of people in the past, but generally they're kinda cool. But this creepypasta makes them a little bit more weird than most of us would like. So the player in this story is going through the motions of a regular match when he finds a box with the name Lucy on it. Opening it, he finds a rusty key and a diary. He reads the diary. It's about a 10-year-old girl named Lucy who, in the first entry, writes that it's her birthday, and that she's excited that her father took the day off work to spend it with her. She also notes that her mother recently passed away. The player decides to keep reading in hopes of figuring out what the key is for. The girl continues to write about how her father grows increasingly distant, and how she was forbidden to go down to his laboratory. The last entry in the journal reads that she is going to go down into the lab with her teddy bear. The player starts to look around the house and finds a cellar door in the backyard. The key opens it. The player has claw marks along the side of the wall. The player then finds a skeleton with a pistol next to it and a camcorder. The camcorder turns on and starts to play. It's the dad panicking about the mother hearing animalistic noises in the background. The player begins to leave the cellar when he notices that the teddy bear that was there when he entered is now gone. So spooky. And at number...
Our annual sale will get you the readiest. Book now for at least 20% off.
Number 7, last one standing. This one tells of a kid named Bill whose parents left for the night. The babysitter hadn't showed up yet, so he went to his room to play some Fortnite. He starts a match, and everyone on his team had the Dark Knight skin on. All of a sudden, the lights in his house shut off. Bill goes to find a flashlight, but a notification pops up on his screen from an anonymous user that reads, "Why'd you do that?" Bill was confused. He goes downstairs and locks the front door, but then he hears a knock. He opens the door, and no one is there, except there's a letter. He reads it, and the words on it repeat, "Don't lock, don't look," over and over again. But the very last word on the letter says, "Hide." Bill freaks out and hides under his bed. That's when he feels air on the back of his neck. He rolls over and sees a bunch of pairs of red eyes behind him. Bill then disappeared from that day onwards, and his parents never found his body. And at number 6, the empty lobby. YouTuber Big Mama Eternal. This creepypasta is about a girl named Eternal, who was a stripper. She liked to use the Battlehound skin, and thought of it as a lucky charm. She would often get a solid amount of kills when playing with it. There's also a mention of gonorrhea in this story, but we'll just kind of skip over that part. Anyway, the skin started taking a life of its own and wanted all of the strippers' attention. And one night, when she returned home at 4 a.m. and booted up the game, the lobby was entirely empty. Her character wasn't there. Thinking it was a glitch, she restarted her system and the game. But the lobby was still empty. So she started the game anyway, and her character wasn't there. Just a view of the pregame lobby and other players in the game. So she shut it off again, decided to play again in the morning. But in the morning, the game kept crashing. In her headset, she could only hear growling. The next day after work, she got home and put on her headset. The growling continued. But it wasn't just coming out of her headset this time. It was in her room. She opened her closet and there was the Battlehound. 2 days later, she was found dead in her apartment. And at number 5, supply llamas. This one is about a player who finds a llama in the game. Immediately after, he gets a message from a user named Skullkiller369 asking if he wants to get more supply llamas. But there's a catch. The player must agree to give Skullkiller his soul as a trade. The player obviously doesn't take it seriously, so he agrees. Skullkiller369 then tells him in order to do so, he can never turn off the game. The player says, yeah, sure. From then on out, the player starts finding finding supply llamas in every match. During one game, he and his friend decide to reset their match, and the player restarts the game on his system. He turns the system back on, and he's already in a new match. He then finds a different kind of llama, a red and black one instead of the purple and blue one. He opens it, and there's no supplies. But there is a note. He reads the note, and it says, "I told you, and you don't listen." The player freaked out turns the system off for the night. The next day, he finds more llamas, 3 of them, all with the same note. The player then goes to find his dad to show him how well he's doing. And then his dad looks at him and asks, "What are you doing in my house?" He doesn't recognize the player at all. The long and short of this story, well, everyone knew that he was good at the game, but his family didn't know who he was afterwards. Yeah, we didn't say all these were perfect horror stories, now did we? And at number 4, Red Team Leader. Another creepypasta from Flipless Script. This one's about a player who buys the Cuddle Team Leader skin from the Fortnite shop, seeing that the skin was only available for an hour and on sale. But when he uses the skin, the color isn't pink. It's blood red in the pregame lobby. He thinks it's a glitch. The match starts and the skin is back to its regular pink. But after the player starts to kill people, the skin starts to turn red. Faintly, but it's there. The more players he kills, the darker the red becomes. Eventually, he's one of the last 10 people in the match. After a solid firefight, he's one of the last 2, and goes after his remaining opponent. But as he takes him out, the player goes down, which is weird since it's a solo match. He shoots the player again. Nothing happens. The player's just down. That's when his controller in real life starts to move. His avatar also starts to move on the screen. The avatar takes out an axe called the chopping block and begins to chop off the enemy's head, decapitating him. The Cuddle Team Leader avatar removes his mask, revealing its head. One eye shot out of its head and slits on its face, forcing a smile. Then the game ends. Up next at 3, The Storm. The Storm tells the story of a terrifying storm experience during a solo match. The player in this one is going about their business, taking out foes when they realize that the storm is about to close in on them. Except it's no regular storm. This one is red, with mist. So the player runs heading towards the safe zone, but can't quite get there. He gets caught in it. As he keeps navigating his way towards the safe zone, still hopeful, images start appearing in the storm. Horrific ones. Ones that shouldn't be in the game. His body in real life starts to itch. He starts to feel actual pain. So he decides to keep running in the game, heading towards what he thinks is a launch pad. His character's health gets to 30. His body in real life begins to break out into hives. As he gets to the launch pad and flies off, his health is at 20. His vision starts to get weird, and his health falls to 10. And the player starts to lose feeling in his body. This is when he breaks out into the safe zone and all of his symptoms disappear in real life. So, of course, he quits the game and hasn't played Fortnite since. And at number 2, We Eliminated You. In this creepypasta posted and beautifully drawn by Jordan Persicati, we get the tale of We Eliminated You, one of the more popular Fortnite creepypastas that have made the rounds on the interwebs, initially created by 34 Matthews HD. Anyway, it's the story of a kid who hops on Fortnite after school one day when his mother hasn't gotten home yet. Everyone in the pregame lobby is wearing the Cuddle Team Leader skin. Noticing a creepy theme, once he gets into the match, he realizes that everyone's username is We Eliminated You, which is weird because you can't have the same name as everyone else on the PlayStation Network. So he assumes that the server was filled with hackers. He ends up making it into the top 3 and watches the last remaining 2 players duke it out, waiting for the victor to surface so he can just take them out with a shotgun. As he was waiting, he notices that there's a structure built nearby. It reads, We Eliminated You. Freaked him out, but he still ignored it. Eventually, the 2 Cuddle Team Leaders who were duking it out are finished, leaving one remaining foe. The player popped out of his hiding spot and shot him in the head. But it didn't faze his opponent, so he shoots him again. Nothing happens. The player assumed it was a hacker. Eventually, the hacker shot him and knocked the player out of the match. Frustrated, he turned off his PS4 annoyed. He decided to go get some fresh air, but before he leaves his house, he gets a text. It's from a number he didn't recognize, and it read, Get ready for your final elimination. But what was worse was the photo attached to the text, an image of the player's house. The player panics and locks himself in his bedroom. He calls the police, and while waiting, he looks at the window, where he spots a mysterious figure watching him, and they're wearing the Cuddle Team Leader mask. He hides in his closet as he hears the mysterious figure come through his back door. As he's hiding, his phone goes off and makes a noise. He panics, thinking that his cover's blown, and looks at the phone. He sees that he's gotten a text from that same number saying, I know you're in there. And last but not least, at number 1, The Whisperer, which is kind of a similar story to the last one we just did. This one tells the story of a boy named Timmy whose parents go out of town to visit his sick aunt. Home alone, he messages his pal Mark, his neighbor, to come over and play Fortnite. But Mark wasn't around, so he hopped on the PlayStation communities to find a partner. He finds a post by a user named BattleBus524, who wrote him, I'm the best Fortnite player of all time. I can carry you. Might need it. Not being overly great at the game, this piques Timmy's curiosity. But he was a bit concerned since the player spelled Fortnite as Fortnite, N-I-G-H-T. He reaches out anyway, and the guy's name is Drew, the 31-year-old dude who lives fairly close to where Timmy lives. They start playing together, and Drew gets killed immediately. Timmy jokes about it, and Drew got really aggressive with him. The more that they played together, Drew started blowing things up recklessly and compromising their matches, and getting killed off really quickly. Drew would whisper to Timmy in his headset, behind you, even though no one was behind Timmy. So eventually Timmy got annoyed, made up an excuse to leave Drew, and blocked him. He then started going on solos. A few minutes later, a voice message. Timmy opens it and the voice says, "You shouldn't have done that. I recommend you don't block me again." A little bit freaked out, Timmy decides to ignore it. 20 minutes later, Drew sends him another message. This time, it wasn't a voice message. It was a photo of Timmy's house. A second later, another message pops up from Drew. "Check your front door." Timmy, freaked out, goes to his front door. No one's there. He opens it and looks down, though, and there's a nutcracker there with a note attached to it. The note reads, "It reminds me of you." It was Timmy's favorite skin to use in the game. Timmy calls the cops and messages his friend Mark, who tells him that he was right to message him. He saw a guy in the bushes out front of Timmy's house. Timmy goes to hide in his parents' closet when he remembers that he didn't lock the back door. That's when he hears the door creak open. Timmy panics and keeps texting Mark, who tells him to be quiet and not make a sound. He hears someone moving around the house, whispering, "I just want to play games." 10 minutes go by, and Mark starts to worry that he hasn't gotten a response from Timmy for all of his last messages. Finally, he does get a message from Timmy, though, and Timmy says that one of their neighbors knocked the guy out. Mark asks if Timmy wants to come over and spend the night at his house to feel safer. The response he gets back reads, "Come over. I want to play Fortnite." In other words, Timmy's dead, Mark. Alright, there we have it, friends. Well, most of those were pretty stupid. Which of these creepypastas do you think might actually be true, though? Or do you think they're all just full of it? Probably, yeah. Give us a shout about your thoughts in those comments below. Now, if you dug this video, hit that like button. Fortnite may be the biggest current gaming sensation taking the world by storm, but there's a darker side to the game that is spawned online, thanks to creative fans and storytellers. Similar to other popular games, Fortnite has been the inspiration behind many a creepypasta and internet urban legend. But unlike many other games, the fever and quality that goes into these stories is unparalleled. So, backed by popular demand, we're returning to our list of the top 10 Fortnite creepypastas. With part 2, we'll be seeing some familiar storytellers on this list from our part 1, but with brand new creepypastas to give you the shivers. Also, be sure to check out their YouTube channels after you watch this video for other great creepypastas too. But in the meantime, let's get into our list. Number 10, Rage Quit. This creepypasta comes from YouTuber Flip the Script, who's pretty much the king of Fortnite creepypastas on YouTube. We featured a few of their other creepypastas in our last video too, so be sure to check them out at some point. Anywho, this creepypasta is about a player who decided to hop on duos with a stranger when all of his friends were away on vacation. Wanting to play with someone who had their mic on, he almost left the game when finally his new partner said, "Hello?" It was a young child. And while the protagonist normally plays with older players, when he lands with the kid, they actually mesh up really well, managing to knock out 2 other duos right from the get-go. That's when he hears the kid politely say, "Just a second," to someone in the room with him. The protagonist asks if the kid's talking to his parents, but the kid says, "No, it's my guardian." The kid then proceeds to tell him that it's his guardian angel. The protagonist tries to shrug it off as the kid having an active imagination, but as the game progresses, the kid keeps talking to his guardian angel, and it gets a little weird. It sounds like things are being thrown around the kid's room in the background. So the protagonist asks if everything is all right over there, and the kid replies, "Yeah, she just doesn't like it when I don't listen, but I'm getting off after this game." 5 minutes go by and he hears the kid say, "I told you I'm going to get off after this game." The protagonist then hears something chilling. A voice replies to the kid in the background saying, "Now, now, now, now." Mommy doesn't know what she's doing here. Now, growing more and more sinister with each word. The kid's character in the game starts to lag and glitch, and then the player hears the kid crying. Then out of nowhere, the kid is disconnected from the party, from the game, and from Xbox Live. The player tried to message the kid a few days later on Xbox Live, but never got a reply. Up next, number 9, The One That Crawls. This creepypasta from YouTuber O1G tells of a player who was playing Fortnite and started getting weird chills while playing. Playing Fortnite on a daily basis, the protagonist used to be a really good player, the best in his friend group, until he started getting these weird chills and this itch that would go up and down his neck and feel like it was burrowing into his skin. To the objective eye of all of his friends and parents in real life, nothing was there, but the player kept feeling it. It started ruining his focus on the game. His friends didn't believe him and started to tease him for how he was becoming crappier at Fortnite. 2 weeks later, as this continued, he took a week off playing the game. The itching stopped entirely. A week after that, he returned to the game and everything went back to normal. The crawling and itching were entirely gone, so the player brushed it off. But then something weird started happening when he and his friends would take down other players. A glitch of sorts. As they shot players and they dropped to the ground and started crawling, their heads would start turning around and going upside down. It was very odd. He didn't think much of it at the time, but a week later, one of his friends, who was in the match with him, started getting an itch similar to the protagonist's. It was as if this itch was contagious, and if you kept playing Fortnite while having this itch, you would share a similar fate to those who had seen crawling. That's where the creepypasta ends, unfortunately. But one can only imagine that those who get the itch and continue to play endure a terrible fate, with their own heads twisting backwards like their characters in the game. Up next at 8, AFK. This one is from flip the script. Another one. This creepypasta is about a player's friend going AFK, away from keyboard, during a game of Fortnite. The protagonist's friend, Andrew, was hilarious to play Fortnite with, although he had a tendency to go AFK. This was towards the end of Season 3, and our protagonist noticed an extra challenge that they hadn't completed, called AFK. The description of the challenge read, "Follow the sign in Greasy for something that will knock you out of your seat." Our protagonist and Andrew made a point of landing in Greasy Grove to complete the challenge, although they noticed that there weren't a lot of other players landing there, which was odd, considering it was part of the challenge. They see the sign on one of the buildings outside to discover a note that read, "Go to Snobby Shores and get a single kill." So they follow those instructions. When they get there, they manage to find a duo and knock them out. Two identical messages then pop up over those defeated players amongst their loot that reads, "Acquire 666 amount of wood and make a 1x1 fort with the materials." Unsure if a building that high was possible, the two of them started collecting wood and built the fort. After building it, they realized that the stairs they had built had disappeared, now replaced with a sign that read, "Jump down." Worried that if they jumped down, they would die, our protagonist asks if Andrew wants to go first. Andrew jumps down, and after a few seconds, it says he needs to be revived. Over the mic, our protagonist tries talking to Andrew, but gets no response. So our protagonist thinks that maybe he's gone AFK. So instead, he gets off and starts playing some solo matches instead. This is when he notices that the AFK challenge has disappeared. The next day, he sees that Andrew is online on Fortnite. He joins his game and tries to talk to him, but there's still no response. So he starts spamming Andrew, worried that this isn't just a broken mic situation. Later, he goes,
Our new hot, fresh breakfast will get you the readiest. Holiday Inn Express. Book now for at least 20% off during our annual sale.
goes into a new lobby and Andrew joins. He tries talking to Andrew, happy that he's not just AFK. But that's when Andrew's speaker turns on and a voice replies, "Andrew isn't here right now." And number 7, Season 0. This creepypasta comes from a YouTuber the name of Neo. The story follows the tale of a player who had signed up for the beta of Fortnite. Weirdly enough, after they signed up, the copy of Fortnite that they got wasn't one that they downloaded online. Rather, it was delivered to their door. Excited, but ignoring the weird fact that it was delivered to their door, the player popped it into their PC to give it a go. Being a big fan of other Battle Royale games, they were a little disappointed with what they saw. Textures were all over the place, areas of the map were unfinished, and the game was full of glitches, and overall it seemed really unpolished. But they continued to play anyway. The Season Pass section was odd too. It was stated to be Season 0, with Season 1 being withheld until the game was out in early access. But something didn't feel right about this. The skins that were in it had red eyes and looked as if they belonged to a horror game. When you started the match, the gameplay was more disturbing than a regular Fortnite game. Whenever you killed someone, you wouldn't return to the lobby. The kills were more gruesome, and there was screaming. Whenever somebody got a victory royale, a link was sent to the player and it revealed a list of winners, with comments from all of them that said they had fun while playing. These players were said to have all disappeared. The protagonist did some research after the fact. Turns out that the employee who added all of this stuff to the game was fired. Beta test was quietly and quickly removed. Up next at 6, Playground. This creepypasta is from a YouTuber named Mr. Gruesome and is about the playground mode in the game. The protagonist in the story tells about how he jumped at the chance to check out the playground mode, and when he loaded up the game and landed in Dusty Divot, he soon realized that he was the only player on the island in this particular match. Ted freaked out. He was like, "Hey, I'll work on my building skills," and started to harvest material. That's when he heard laughter, and it sounded like the laughter of a child. After finding some loot, he was about to leave Dusty when he heard more laughter. Turning around, he saw a deep facing him, despite being the only one in the match. The default skin started acting strangely, running towards the player. So the player pulled out their green pump and shot the default skin right in the head. But it did nothing. That's when the skin stopped directly in front of the player, and in a demonic voice it said, "Leave and never return, or else." Immediately afterwards, the player's PS4 and TV shut off on its own. In at number 5, Tomato Head Terror. This creepypasta dives into the hypothetical history of one of the locations on Fortnite's map. Tomato Head Terror tells the story of Tomato Man's lost head and the rivalry it had with Greasy Grove's beef boss. The rivalry goes way back, between the opposing town's pizzeria and the burger joint Durr Burger. Durr Burger expanded all across the towns of Fortnite, being adored by many, and Beef Boss enjoyed the profits that his successful chain brought him. But there was one place that he hadn't conquered: Tomato Town. The Beef Boss headed to Tomato Town to offer Tomato Head a deal, but Tomato Head declined his offer. But no matter how many offers Beef Boss made, Tomato Head would continue to reject him. So the Beef Boss plotted a different way to get what he wanted. He decided to destroy Tomato Town and Tomato Head, burning the town to the ground. He dragged Tomato Head out of his burning pizzeria and decapitated him. Beef Boss then displayed his head as a trophy, as a warning to anyone who wanted to compete with his restaurant. Don't try. And at number 4, Lying Within. We actually covered one of these videos by Jordan Persicati in our last video. Essentially, there's a narration of a creepypasta while he draws a Fortnite-themed illustration that is absolutely brilliant. Anywho, in this creepypasta, which was inspired by the Raven from Fortnite as its creepy antagonist, this one is about a high school kid who tells about him and his friends going on a trip together after high school. They all bonded over online gaming, particularly Fortnite. One of his friends named Bridget he had originally met on World of Warcraft, and she showed him the ways of the game, which is how they formed a bond. Turns out that the two of them went to the same school, and the summer after graduation, the protagonists, Sean, Bridget, and their two friends, Ryan and Elise, ended up taking a road trip to an abandoned mansion as a big final hurrah before they all parted ways to go to university. As they were grabbing lunch just outside of the town at the mansion, a crazy old man approached them and started shouting, "There's more than brick and mortar in them walls." Once they got into the old house, they were in awe of its immensity and eeriness. Sean snapped some photos as they broke into the boarded up house. Inside the house, it looked as if it was 100 years old. The group split up and Sean found a piano. He sat down at its bench to discover the piano still worked, so he played a few keys. His playing was interrupted by one of his friends, Elise, screaming as she almost fell off the balcony. He ran over to her and Elise told him that someone had tried to push her off that balcony. They decided it was time to leave, but before going, Sean wanted to snap a few more pictures before they headed out. Going upstairs, he snapped some more photos and went into the bathroom to grab a few pictures. Looking up from his camera, he spotted a shadowy figure, which appeared out of nowhere. Freaked out, Sean called out to his friends, hoping that it was just them. But as he backed up towards the other side of the bathroom, the figure started to bolt towards him. Sean turned and ran. The figure was chasing him, but he managed to make it down the stairs. Looking back, he saw the figure jump down towards the foyer. Sprinting towards him, Sean made a run for it, but ended up tripping and fell down the stairs leading down to the basement. He looked up in time to see the figure at the top of the stairs and the basement door shut. The whole room was dark as he heard footsteps coming down the stairs. Then, his camera, which had landed a few feet away from him, flashed. He reached for it and looked at its screen, which revealed the last photo. It was Sean holding his hands up to block the flash from his eyes, and behind him were hands reaching out for him. And Elise's body was jutting out from the brick wall in the background. The old man who had been in the diner before with them was also visible in the camera screen. That's when Sean heard the voice in his ear. "I told you there was more than brick and mortar in them walls." Up next, number 3, The Donation. From YouTube channel Next Gen Entertainer, The Donation is a tale of a player named Ricky, an ordinary guy who was having a pretty rough time in his life and was struggling to make rent each month. So as a get-rich-quick scheme, he decided he was going to try to make money off of playing Fortnite. He wanted to be like Ninja or Myth and make some cold hard cash from it. He set up a Twitch account, setting up his first stream as Ricky Plays. After about 10 minutes of streaming and no views, he received a comment from a Twitch player named Vanguard13. Thinking that it was odd since his stream had no viewers, he read it, and it said, "So you want to be famous?" He replied saying, "Hell yeah, I'd die to be famous." And the account responded immediately with a follow-up comment that said, "Remember me." Time passed. Ricky managed to get about 2,000 followers on Twitch and played every day. One day after an hour of streaming and grinding solos, he had about 87 viewers, although he never really interacted with the people watching his stream unless they donated to him. He got a notification about someone donating him $10, and attached to the donation was a comment that read, "Remember me." As soon as he read that comment, Ricky lost control of his character and was sniped from 278 meters away. His screen went to the camera of the player who killed him, and that's when things got weird. It was someone wearing the Raven skin, and the player was facing the screen, which is something that can't be done in Fortnite. The name of the player was Vanguard13. His stream then went dead. Ricky's monitor also went dead, so Ricky had to drive down to his local computer shop to pick up another. On the way there, he noticed a poster hanging outside of a store with the Fortnite Raven skin and the words, "Watch Ricky Plays." He went to the shop where the poster was hung outside and inquired about it, but they didn't know how it got there. When he brought them outside to show them, the poster was gone. From there on out, he kept seeing things written on walls that read, "Watch Ricky Plays," and kept hearing creepy laughter. When he was back home, every banner ad that he encountered online was an ad for his Twitch channel. Thinking he was being stalked, he went down to the police station. While waiting, he got to chatting with an old woman, and eventually told her all the events that he had encountered. The old woman then looked at him for a moment, smiled, and then said the words, "So you want to be famous?" Ricky burst out of the police station, but to his surprise, the world around him had changed. He was in a graveyard with the Raven, who was holding his Fortnite character's decapitated head. Ricky then woke up in a hospital bed, and the doctor had told him that he had been imagining all of these horrors because of how addicted he was to playing games on his Twitch channel. Ricky eventually went home and decided to play a game of Fortnite to put his mind at ease. Seems like a great idea. A year later, Ricky was doing well. His stream had taken off, and he had made himself a good chunk of change. Never had to worry about money anymore either. One day, while he was playing Fortnite on Twitch, he was given a ton of donations, all of which were only $1. Each donation had a message, a random number with a random letter. Confused, he thanked the viewer for the donations and continued the stream. After it ended, he couldn't stop thinking about those weird donations. He went onto his Twitch account to take a look at the messages again. That's when he put them together. The message read, "So, you want to be famous?" Up next, number 2, The Rift. The Rift tells the story of a player who was super excited about Season 5 of the game. Once playing it, he fell in love with the rifts, and loved being able to run through rifts, especially when he had a bad start. It was super fun, and helped him win twice as much as he used to. One night while playing, he went over to Paradise Palms searching for a rift, but the one that he found looked a little bit different than the others he had seen. It looked more like a black hole. Thinking it was a glitch, he ran through it anyway. Except this time, rather than skydiving, he was elsewhere, a place that didn't look like the rest of the game. There was a river made out of lava, buildings were made out of bones, and there were people crying in agony. That's when he took a closer look to realize that those people were the bodies of players that he had previously killed, crying out to him. Traumatized, he tried to get away, but the dead players continued to talk to him, telling him secrets about the game and what to expect from the future. They kept repeating a date, too, followed by another date, over and over again. That's when he realized that they were saying his birthday, meaning the latter date had to be the date of his death. That's when his game crashed, since the player has desperately been looking for another rift like that one, but hasn't been able to find one since. And finally, at number 1, Disconnected. Our final creepypasta on this list is Disconnected. It tells of a player reminiscing about Season 1 and his pal CJ, who a while back had moved out of state. CJ and the protagonist were high school buddies, and their friendship flourished while playing Fortnite together, playing for hours on end. But one day, CJ just disappeared. He never returned.
I lost my sight when I was 14 years old, so I really navigate the world by touch. When
To the game, and he never replied to the protagonist on social media and never returned his calls. The protagonist grew worried. Months went by and there was still radio silence. One day, someone joined the protagonist's own private game, even though the player wasn't invited. So the protagonist kicked the player out and decided to go on some solos. Afterwards, he went to bed. That night, he dreamt that he was playing with CJ, who was using the Reaper skin. They won, but then the Reaper turned into CJ himself, his actual body, which was horribly decomposed. Terrified and distressed, the protagonist woke up, hoping that his dream wasn't a reality. The next day, he played Fortnite, and that odd stranger reappeared in his game yet again. When he tried to kick the player, the game wouldn't let him, so he tried to shut off his game, but his computer wouldn't shut off. The player's mic kept going off, but all he could hear was static. So the protagonist played the game anyway, and it appeared that this mysterious player was using an aimbot. As he played onwards, he saw that the player's character, the Reaper, was trying to talk. Not with his mic, but in the game, with the character's mouth moving. It looked as if he was trying to make out 3 small words, so the protagonist asked him to say it over the mic instead, but the mic was silent. Next thing they know, they're playing 2v2, and eventually, they win the game. The protagonist looked over to his partner to see that the character had disappeared from the game entirely. That's when in real life, the protagonist felt the room he was in go entirely cold. He got a chill up his spine. He turned around from his computer, and standing there was CJ. But CJ didn't look human. He was rotting. The protagonist asked, CJ, what happened to you? CJ looked at him with a blank expression, and his mouth moved into those 3 short words. He said, you left me. And from there, the creepypasta ended with the sound of a bloody impact, and what seemed to be a body dropping and being dragged away. Alright, there we have it, friends. Which of these creepypastas was your favorite? And out of all the Fortnite creepypastas we've... Fortnite creepypastas. Who doesn't love a good scary story? Well, turns out all of you guys adore them dearly, and that's why we're back with the top 10 Fortnite creepypastas part 3. We've got a great selection for you guys this time around, and even a sequel story from one of our original ones that we talked about in our part 1 list. As always, please go check out the individual...
Red team pinned the
channels of each of these storytellers to see more creepypastas from them. Alright, so with that in mind, let's get to it, guys.
Cuddle Team Leader appeared in the shop today. There wasn't any warning, and he was only available for 1 hour. That didn't make sense. Needless to say, I bought it. I collect all the legendary skins, and I had to take advantage of this. I bought the skin and immediately equipped it. I noticed the fur wasn't pink, but a blood red. I hear in my headset a roar like a bear would make in real life, and I didn't think anything of it and joined in a solos game. I'm in the lobby and I see that I have a new taunt already equipped, and it's called the chopping block. I wasn't able to use the taunt before it put me on the battle bus. I decided to land at Dusty Divot and start on the outside of the research lab that they have there. I pick up a common tactical and start shooting the 2 people who landed nearby me. Unfortunately, I was able to get a gun, and they weren't. I noticed when I was in game and searching for a weapon, Cuddle Team Leader's skin was pink, just like how it was supposed to be. After I got those 2 kills, however, the skin got darker and darker. It was now a mix between pink and red. I managed to go inside the middle of the research lab in Dusty Divot, because that's where all the good people go, and usually that's where you can find better guns. I was able to find a weakened John Wick and took him out in 1 shot with my common tactical. I killed him from behind, a coward move, I know, but it still works. I was able to pick up his green pump, and he had 2 minis left over. I was decently set up for a win. I leave Dusty after not seeing any more enemies and make my way to Tilted Towers. I'm able to loot some buildings that other players missed and was able to add a blue pump and blue AR to my inventory. I start grinding for more materials, and as soon as I got close to 300 wood, I start to get shot at. I build a ramp and pick him off easily, and I see that my cuddle team leader's skin grew darker with my new kill. The circle gets smaller until there are only about 15 people left. The circle seems like it's going to end near Haunted Hills, and I get a move on to meet the people in the circle. I go to the part in Tilted where the meteor hit and picked up one of the new hop rocks. Because of that, I was able to get closer to the circle than I would have just by walking. My way into the circle just as the storm was closing in. There were 9 people left, and at least half of them were already in gunfights as I could hear them fighting. I see a person who looked like a noob, and I was able to pick him off. I looked up at the HUD and saw that 4 people remained, and I used this time to build up and make a fort for what looked like final circles. I was in luck, and the circle was placed near the side of Haunted Hills that I was building at. I see a person who was engaging another enemy, and waited for him to kill the other person. As I scaled my fort down to go kill him, to my surprise, the other person that was left was already on his way to challenge him. I thought this was perfect, and even though not action-packed, it would give me a W anyway. The challenger eliminates the guy I was going for. I take out my blue AR and I start spraying him. Since he was hurt from engaging the guy who I was going for, I built a ramp on top of him and jumped down with my blue pump. I hit him in the head and he goes down. He goes down on a solos game. He isn't eliminated. That's when my controller moves on its own. Cuddle team leader got right on top of him as he was crawling, and it went to my taunt screen. He selected chopping block. He takes out an axe like it was a mining tool. And then he does it. He cut the downed enemy's head off. When it said I was the winner, its fur turned to that blood red fur that I saw when I fought him. And he let out this giant roar. As the match was about to be completed, he took off the mask portion of the skin to reveal a character's head that had some damage to it. He only had one eye. The other eye was shot clean through by a bullet, and his smile had been forced because of slits on his face. I will update as time goes on, because this character shouldn't be in the game. I'll tell you a story. I emailed Epic Games about Red Team Leader. However, they never messaged me back. Red Team Leader, won't let me equip another skin. I could only use him. But there was an option to wear or not to wear the mask. I preferred to leave the mask on, since without it, he looked terrifying. Today I found out that I unlocked a new ability for Red Team Leader since I reached level 66. It was not 1, but 2 new taunts called Maniac and Shuriken. When I was in the lobby, I noticed that Red Team Leader wasn't pink at all anymore at the beginning. Before it took kills to get his skin to turn red, now it just was. In between this and the new taunts, I was curious as to what new horrors await me. I dropped Shifty Shafts and I find nothing. I'm running all over the place trying to find a gun, but I can't find one. All of a sudden, a guy rushes me with a tactical and I think it's game over. But Red Team Leader does that chopping block taunt again. Only this time, he cuts the player in half with his axe. Not his head, his body. I pick up his tactical and I continue onward. The circle is placed more so to the right side of the map, so I make my way to Salty Springs. Inside Salty Springs, I start getting shot at by a Zoe. I was going to finish her off with my tactical, but Red Team Leader used one of its new taunts called Shuriken, and he takes out these knives. They're solid black with red down the middle, and throws them at the Zoe, killing her instantly. I was starting to get concerned because not only am I not able to use another skin, but now Red Team Leader can just kill whenever he wants. As soon as the Zoe died, Red Team Leader did something. He did something he's never done before. I noticed its hair had grown longer and sharper, like armor, and I noticed he was bleeding down his neck, the one place that you can see his skin. At this point, I was done. I was just fed up. Epic Games never wrote me back, and I couldn't even use any other skins. I went to leave the match, but it wouldn't let me. I tried to turn my stuff off, but it stayed on. And Red Team Leader continued to play. But he was playing all alone. Control him with the controller. He was perfectly fine here. He makes it all the way until there are 3 people, counting himself. The circle is ending in Dusty Divot, and Red Team Leader gets pinned in between the 2 final solo players. I thought it was game over until he used it. He used the other taunt. Maniac. What I saw, I'll never forget. He takes out 2 small axes and he slowly walks over to one of them, taking bullet after bullet. He's able to get up into striking distance of the confused and no doubt scared player, and he slashes him in the face and in his back on the way down. At that point, I saw that he was bleeding even more around his neck. This time, to the final player, he runs. He runs after him. And while the player was reloading, Red Team Leader took one of the axes in his hand, and he threw it at the player. It hit the player's face, right in between the eye. It said that Red Team Leader had won. He let out this fierce, spine-chilling roar. He takes off his mask again, and I see where all the blood was coming from. His jawbone is broken now, and his mouth is wide open. You can see all the bones and blood. He lets out another roar, causing his jawbone to sink lower. He points at me. He takes the axe and puts it to his throat, and then points back.
You asked and it's back. The Papa John's Double Cheeseburger Pizza brings cheeseburgers and pizza together again. It's the best reunion ever. For $11, get a large pizza with double beef, zesty burger sauce, cheese, Roma tomatoes, and pickles.
I never can use the today.
It's just your imagination. Don't let it run wild. I know what I saw. I know what Red Team Leader is capable of. I know he's coming for me. I called the police when everything shut off. The police, they didn't believe me. They said it was all in my head.
What?
They think I'm crazy. So they called paramedics. And I was sent to the hospital. More specifically, the mental floor of the hospital. They say I need to be under constant supervision until it's proven I'm not a threat to myself or others. The pills they have me on, I don't know if Red Team Leader is real or not anymore. I doubt everything. Lights out, the nurses tell us. I've been about 2 weeks since I've been here. Dr. Jones, keep up at this pace. I can go home tomorrow. I'm nervous. On one hand, I want to go home because I'm not psycho. But on the other, I don't want to die. Once lights out hit, I have this same routine. I just stare out the window. I just think about, well, anything and everything. I think about the last 2 entries I've shared with you guys, and what a video game character was doing to me.
I'm gonna end the stream here. Peace.
Our new hot, fresh breakfast will get